Okay, welcome to this fourth, and it's also the last session of today's MEDREG conference. We will, and this is myself and also my fellow panelists, will look together into energy supply now, so into new gas discoveries and market integration. Before I will introduce my distinguished panelists, I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Nina Grall. I'm working for the Energy Community Secretariat in Vienna. And after the introduction of my panelists, I will also give you a very short introduction and an answer to the question that you might probably have: why do we have the energy community in a MEDREG conference? Before I do that, let me first thank the MEDREG colleagues for the invitation to this panel. It's a big honor and a big pleasure. But then also let me congratulate you. This is a very interesting, a very impressive, I have to say, conference. So congratulations from my side. Now to the introduction of my panelists. I said already I have 4 distinguished discussion partners today. And if the gentlemen agree, I will go ladies first. I have here on my left Mrs. Houda Allal, who is the Director General of the Mediterranean Energy Observatory. She is also the head of the Secretariat, the platform on gas of the Secretariat in the Union for the Mediterranean. And I have to say she has an impressive experience also in academic fields. Having mentioned already the Union for the Mediterranean, on my left I have Mrs. Ahmed Ibraheem, who is actually the head of the energy sector in the Secretariat of the Union for the Mediterranean. He is by experience and also by education a diplomat, and this function also worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. Then I have to say I have a very big pleasure to introduce to you and to welcome here with me a great friend and an old friend and a very dear friend, I have to say, Mr. Pedro Verdelho, who is actually a member of the board of the Portuguese Regulator, so he will give us some insight also from regulatory side, which I think is fair enough when you're talking about the MEDREG conference. But he is also chairing a lot of international working groups, one of which is the gas working group of ERSE and CER. But then he is also engaged in renewables. He is the chairman or the co-chairman of the Renewables Task Force in MEDREG. And last but not least, I would say the infrastructure arm of today's panel discussion. I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Saltuk Duzyol. And now I have to apologize for my Turkish. And I have to say I have here in front of me a very impressive CV. I don't know where to start. But he has certainly a very huge experience in infrastructure projects. He is currently working the CEO of TANAP. He worked previously for Botash, and he was also involved in the Mediterranean Energy Observatory. I have to say from a very personal perspective, and you will see in a second why I have this personal perspective, I'm very much looking forward also to this presentation, because when we are talking about TANAP, we are talking about the project that indeed links the 3 different areas, if you want, legal areas and countries. We're talking about the project that connects the EU countries, energy community countries, and Mediterranean countries. With this, a final word on the organization of this panel. As I said, I will have a very brief introduction on why I'm actually sitting here, and then I will invite my distinguished panelists here to have their interventions, their presentations, and afterwards we will go for a session for questions and answers. We are running a bit late, which is not our fault. But I negotiated already, and so we can borrow a bit from the cocktail break. So if I calculate correctly, we would then actually close to 7:30 if all goes well. I would like to invite everybody to stick to the 12 minutes that have been arranged and have been agreed, so we can also have still a session for questions and answers. With this, I would like to invite the colleagues to show my slide, please. I don't know how to do. Okay. So I promise it's only one slide, and I promised you to give you the answer what the energy community has to do with the Mediterranean region. And the answer is already the map that you see here on this slide. And actually I found 7 good reasons, and when reading today or yesterday in the plane the investment report of MEDREG, I actually found even 8 good reasons for joining forces. And this is in this investment report. We are talking about investments in this panel. It says that infrastructure project can be hindered by lack of regulatory cooperation. What you see on this map actually is that we have a lot in common. So we meaning the energy community countries and the MEDREG countries. I see Charles over there. This goes also of course for the European countries, because you have indeed in MEDREG a number of European member states, and Charles mentioned already we have exactly for this reason a very good cooperation, but then also even a memorandum of understanding. So the reasons. We have common members. You see them on the map. The blue ones are the MEDREG countries. The yellow ones, also to show you who the energy communities are, the energy community members. Those in blue and yellow are common members. We have common areas of work. This is gas, electricity, renewables, investment / infrastructure. We have common goals, which basically are interconnections, market opening, competition, security of supply and consumer protection. You will find them for the energy community in our working basis if you want. So this is an international treaty, the so-called Energy Community Treaty. For the MEDREG, you will find it in various strategy papers of MEDREG. And this also already shows the difference between energy community countries and Mediterranean countries. For the energy community, when we talk about all these goals, we are talking about legally binding obligations. So this is all enshrined in an international treaty. This is not voluntary, this is obligatory for our members. Different to Mediterranean countries, where a lot of work, and I have to say thanks and congratulations to MEDREG, is done on basis of guidelines of good practice. And we are just doing now together with MEDREG a report on transparency in gas, based on your guidelines for good practice. And this brings me then also later to a question that I would like to raise to the audience, but then maybe also to my distinguished panelists here. Briefly, to finish this, we have common infrastructure connections, or at least projects as well. We have a comparable institutional framework, and as I said, we have already established cooperation. And maybe, I don't know, I hope at least there can be lessons learned from the energy community. Our countries went through a process of implementing EU regulations. So this is sometimes a painful process, at the end hopefully a useful one. And this brings me to the question that I will not answer now, but I would like to see what the audience thinks and what the panelist thinks. Whether, and we don't have to talk about the entire legislative framework that the union has or the contracting parties have, but let's talk about or think about the minimum set of binding legal rules. Would you think this is needed in the Mediterranean countries as well? And then maybe linked to all the interventions, to your own interventions, maybe from a regulatory perspective, from an academic or observatory perspective, and then of course also from the political, and finally from the infrastructure development perspective. So this is a bit food for thought. I would like only as a final comment mention, and maybe also giving a bit of another food for thought in this context. Mrs. Winkler earlier in her presentation mentioned that when you as Mediterranean countries want to benefit from what is possible in terms of renewables investments from member states to basically import their renewable targets, then you would also have to, in the Mediterranean countries, have some kind of certain limit, and that's not all what is necessary in Europe, but a certain limit of legal obligations in place to be allowed to use this opportunity. She also mentioned market coupling is an option. I can tell you, when you think about this, and this is an experience made in the energy community, then you're talking about really strong and we have heavily discussed this on European level and with our contracting parties, strong legal commitments on both sides. So this is a bit for food for discussion. With this, I would like to pass the floor, and I would like to maybe stay with my policy, ladies first. I would like to pass the floor to Mrs. Allal. I think you have a presentation set.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So I will go here for the presentation. So first of all, thank you very much to MEDREG for inviting me to participate to this important event. So it's a great pleasure and a privilege for me to be here. So before talking about the role of natural gas in the Mediterranean energy future, let me introduce very briefly OMI, for those who do not know us. OMI stands for Observatory Méditerranéen de l'Énergie. We do not only observe energy, we analyze energy as well. OMI is the association of the leading energy companies in the Mediterranean region. We promote regional cooperation in the energy field, all energies included, and we are the voice of the energy industry and the think tank. We also act as mentioned Secretariat of the UFM gas platform, and I take the opportunity to thank very much the UFM co-presidency, the European Commission, Jordan, and the Euro ministers for energy, for their confidence to give this role to OMI, and of course to the European Commission for the support and the excellent cooperation we are having since the launch of the UFM gas platform. So today, with the time which is allocated to me, I would like to share with you how we see the role of natural gas in the Mediterranean region, the situation today and the prospects up to 2040. We produce, you may know also, Mediterranean energy perspective. It is every 2 years we observe and we produce scenarios, and the latest one was published in 2018. We are now working on the 2020 edition, so what I will share with you comes from the results of the MEP 2018 edition, and we have two different scenarios. One is, which we call the business as usual scenario, which is strict with what is really happening in the region up to 2040. And we have analyzed an alternative scenario. And for this MEP 2018 edition, we stick to the COP Paris Agreement and what the countries have committed themselves to achieve in order to contribute to combating climate change. And as you may know, in these NDCs, we have two different scenarios. One which they consider unconditional, which means that what will the country achieve, whatever happens, and then what they call conditional part, and the conditional part is if we have access to the climate investment financing, what we can up to which we can achieve. And so this is when I present proactive scenario and reference scenario, the difference is unconditional NDCs and conditional NDCs, and we will see the difference between both and within these two different scenarios which role for the natural gas in the Mediterranean region. We take into consideration elements which comes from the experts. In order to assess how much energy will be needed, we rely on two main criteria, the population and GDP. We are not the expert for that, and we rely on the expertise of those who know the subject better than us. And what we see is that up to 2040, we are going to have more than 100 million people that will be added, I would say, in our region. All of them will be in the South Mediterranean countries. The second element is GDP. GDP will be increasing, and here again, it will be occurring much more in the South than in the North. So these are the two first elements. So how it will translate Where? Nearby. Like this morning, didn't want to. Is there someone who can help? Ah, yes, here. Thank you. So this, what the scenario, the reference scenario is telling us that in the overall Mediterranean region, we are expecting to have a 40% increase of the energy demand in the region. Now, this might not look impressive, 40%, but when we look at the situation according to the sub-region, the North Mediterranean region and the South Mediterranean region, we have different stories. In the North Mediterranean region, we expect the energy demand to almost come stable and even decrease a little bit. So all the increase will happen in the south. This is the first key findings. All the energy increase will happen in the Mediterranean countries in the south, and it will double. So we expect the energy demand to double up to 2040 in the South Mediterranean region, which we have a divergence in terms of energy increase in the both Mediterranean region, north and south. This is the first. The pointer doesn't like me. How did you do it? What is your secret? We should come back to the other session with the digital. What doesn't work? Okay. There. So I showed there. Okay. Give it a try. No. So I will. Can we do it together? Okay. Better. Okay, so now, as I said, the energy demand will decline in the north, and it will increase double in the south. We can go first. Now, looking at the structure of the energy demand, the second key findings, whatever the scenario is, and you see here the difference between the alternative scenario, the proactive scenario, and the business as usual. The energy mix in the Mediterranean region will still be hydrocarbons based. The hydrocarbons will still play an important role, including if we implement in full the NDCs which were announced within the framework of COP21, and this is something that we need to take into consideration. Second, oil will still be the main energy consumed in the energy mix, fuel demand, whatever the scenario is. Well, okay, next. Now, when we look at the story between here again, between north and south, we see two different, so this is for the Mediterranean. We see two different stories. In the North Mediterranean countries, we are going much faster green than in the south. Despite the huge potential of renewables in the south, what we see here is that renewables are increasing faster in the north, and natural gas is increasing fast, and so the fuel-based energy mix in the Mediterranean region will be natural gas and renewables. We take the whole region as a whole, and if we take it by region, so renewables are much increasing faster in the North Mediterranean countries than in the south, and natural gas is very important. What is increasing faster and is electricity demand. Here, the electricity demand in the South Mediterranean countries is expected to triple. So energy demand is expected to double, electricity demand is expected to triple in the Mediterranean region with, as you can see here again, in the north part, even a decrease of the energy demand in the future and exploding an electricity burden in the South Mediterranean countries. The structure, the fuel mix. Here is the story I told you about of the integration of renewable energy in the north is much more visible when we look at the electricity mix in the North Mediterranean countries. So renewables are leading the green, so generation to go green is happening, in particular in the north and in the South Mediterranean countries. Renewables are increasing, but you see here in red that gas will remain the primary fuel to generate electricity in the Mediterranean region, but with the help, of course, of renewables. How this will impact CO2 emissions. So in the Mediterranean region, we have, of course, the socio-economic development, which is important. Now energy is important even to promote jobs, to create development, to improve the life of citizens. But we have two main challenges in the region. The first one, the oldest one, is security of supply. Security of supply is a challenge for both producing countries and the consuming countries. This is the first. And now, which is coming more and more important, back to back, hand in hand with energy security, is climate change. We all know that the Mediterranean region is known as a hotspot, and we are now living and suffering from climate change. I think that we feel it in our daily life, and so that is why these NDCs, and we are taking into consideration and these NDCs, and therefore the energy future, have to adapt to these two challenges: how to improve energy security from one side, and how to combat climate change. Looking at the impact of the two scenarios on the CO2 emissions related to the energy which will be produced and consumed in the region, we see that we will have some 36% of increase of the CO2 emissions. So up to 2040, if we go to the unconditional part of the NDCs, but if we implement the NDCs in full, then we can even reduce by 4%. Which means that instead of adding 720 million tons of the CO2 emissions, we could actually decrease from current levels. So this is, to conclude, so if we implement in the full NDCs, we can limit the increase in total met energy demand. We can, of course, reduce the increase of the electricity demand by 32%. We can decrease in total CO2 emissions at regional level by 4%. We reduce the met energy dependence, which we will show later, by 10% points. But still, the conclusion is that it is not enough. So the target of limiting the increase of the 2 degrees, which is targeted, is not enough. So what the NDCs, the ambitions that is put into the NDCs in the Mediterranean region is not enough, and the region has potential to contribute better in a better way. Within this, let me now focus on natural gas. So we see here the natural gas reserves in the Mediterranean region. The region holds 5% of the world's proven gas reserves, and yet many areas in the region, and especially in the south and offshore, are still either unexplored or underexplored. As you all know, for instance, what has made the East Mediterranean region an exciting exploration frontier have been the large discovery that happened since 2009, and the prospect of substantial hydrocarbons resources still waiting to be tapped beneath the Eastern Mediterranean waters. The Mediterranean region's natural gas resources are not limited to the conventional ones. According to the US Energy Information Administration, the Mediterranean region has 33 TCM of technically recoverable shale gas resources potential, which is almost 4 times more than the region's conventional gas reserves. However, development of shale gas resources is still in its infancy in the Mediterranean region. So the region has enormous potential in terms of gas, which is available. Natural gas production in Mediterranean region, which has nearly doubled since 1990, will do it again before 2040. Almost all the gas produced in the Mediterranean region occurs in the south. Today and in the future, Algeria will remain the largest producer, followed by Egypt and Israel. Natural gas demand, so this is how we forecast the natural gas production by country. Looking at the demand, and here again according to the different scenarios, Natural gas demand in the Mediterranean region is expected to increase by 15 to 70%, according to the scenario. This picture, however, hides an important discrepancy between the two sources of the Mediterranean. In the north, natural gas demand is expected to remain more or less at current levels or decline until the end of the outlook period. However, in the south, it will increase strongly. We should keep in mind that since 2014, more gas is consumed already in the South Mediterranean than in the north, and yet almost three-quarters of the gas consumed in the Mediterranean region will occur in the south by 2040. So I mentioned about production and consumption. Now let me say a few words on trade developments. Today, the Mediterranean region as a whole is a net importer. So if we take all the countries all together, we are importer of natural gas. Looking into the future, the region as a whole will remain a net gas importer. In the reference scenario, Mediterranean net gas imports still increase by about 45% by 2040, whereas in the proactive scenario, they will be more than doubled due to the energy saving and more renewable energy into the energy mix. But the region, whatever here again the scenario is, we will still be importers, but we contain in the same time important gas exporters. By 2040, natural gas export potential in the South Mediterranean region will increase moderately to 50 BCM per year in our reference scenario, but this level could be more than double to 110 BCM per year in the proactive scenario. These are the different pictures of the gas potential. Now let me discuss a bit on the question which was raised, which is the gas interconnection projects and how they can potentially impact trade among neighboring countries as well as create space for new sub-regional clusters of market integration. As you know, while the geographical from the Mediterranean basin is that of a ring, gas trade did not develop circularly, as it happened for electricity trade. The lack of east-west gas interconnection geographically divides the Mediterranean region into three separate corridors or zones: the Western Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, and Central Mediterranean. Physical integration between the different trade zones could improve security of gas supply in the region as a whole. In the Western Mediterranean, once market integration between France and the Iberian Peninsula is enhanced, additional gas would be able to enter the northern and central Europe from the Western Mediterranean through capacities between France and its northern borders. The project MidCat and project STEP both aim to increase interconnection capacity between France and the Iberian Peninsula. In the central Mediterranean, various ongoing projects have the potential of diversifying trade routes and sources, eliminating bottlenecks, and introduce natural gas to non-gas consuming countries through the region. For instance, the Galsi project would allow Italy to introduce gas to the Sardinia island, as well as to the French island of Corsica, and import an additional gas from Algeria through a direct flow. The Trans-Adriatic TAP project, currently under construction, will transport gas from the Caspian Basin to Italy as an extension of the TANAP passing through Turkey. The IGI Poseidon pipeline should in turn bypass Albania and directly link Greece to Italy. However, while the TAP project is at the end of the construction phase, the future of the Poseidon project is limited to another supply route realization in the EastMed area, the EastMed pipeline. The Eastern Mediterranean region market is not integrated. The two main gas markets in the region, those of Egypt and Turkey, are not interconnected. An essential step to eliminate trade barriers could be completion of the Arab gas pipeline and the construction of a connection between Syria and Turkey. Building an underwater pipeline to Turkey and or Greece is another option considered to export gas from the offshore fields in the region to the markets in Europe. However, for the moment, the focus is rather on the regional market, which is being developed with the pipelines connecting Egypt with Israel and Israel with Jordan. So what all this means for Europe? The Mediterranean region has been and will remain crucial for Europe, contributing to the diversification and security of the European supply portfolio. In fact, the Mediterranean region has at least 4 significant benefits to contribute to the gas supply security of Europe. First, its bridge role for bringing gas supply from new sources and routes by pipelines, such as the South Gas Corridor. Second, it is home of 2 traditional pipelines gas suppliers, namely Algeria and Libya, and also new supply sources in the East Mediterranean, which will enhance the ability of the region to contribute to the energy supply of Europe. Third, having more than half of European regasification capacity, the potential of the Mediterranean region as a diversity tool. LNG is expected not only to play an increasingly important role in filling Europe's future supply gap, but also will help improve security of supply by providing flexibility and diversification through multiple supply options. Finally, the role of the Mediterranean region as a future potential gas hub could be seen as a connecting element of the Euro-Mediterranean gas market. Let me now conclude by stressing the importance of promoting regional dialogue, partnership, and cooperation in the gas sector, which is key for improving security of the Euro-Mediterranean region and can deliver important benefits to all parties concerned. A regional structured dialogue allowing the gradual establishment of a Euro-Mediterranean gas market is crucial to promote security, transparency, and predictability of both demand and supply in the context of regional energy transition. In this regard, the Union for the Mediterranean Gas Platform, co-chaired by the European Commission and Jordan, aims at strengthening such a regional dialogue, cooperation, and partnership in the gas sector in the Euro-Mediterranean area, North-South and South-South. OME, from our part, we are actively committed to such an effective regional cooperation, not only within our role as Secretariat of the EURM Gas Platform, but also as stakeholder supporting this initiative and through our constituency and mission, namely gathering platform of leading energy companies, promoting cooperation and dialogue between our members, and voice of the industry toward the decision makers and authorities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. It was actually an excerpt from a paper that is published on OMI's website, and I can heavily and strongly recommend to read it. It's really very interesting. Thanks also for having already answered some of my questions, namely what will be the role of gas in the future, in particular in countries where the climate change will have a strong impact. So what we saw from your presentation, gas will still have a role, and even increasing role in some countries, which very well coincides with the fact that you have indeed in some countries big and large new gas discoveries. Talking about investments, investments are about needed. I think I saw in your report that about 3 trillion euros would be needed to invest what is needed in the Mediterranean region. Talking about investments are of course needed if we want to integrate markets. And with this, I will pass the floor directly to Mr. Ibraheem. I would be interested to hear what is the view of the Union for the Mediterranean, what are potentials for further market integration, what are the requirements. And I have to really see a bit for timing, so I will introduce some kind of decent reminder. First of all, some of you will have to catch planes, and certainly I don't want to deprive you from the cocktail reception, which is still waiting outside after this session. So I will have to be a bit strict on timing. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nina. I promise I will not be straining you with slides. So rather, I'll be giving a brief intervention. Afterwards, I'll be more than happy to take any questions you may have. So good afternoon to you all. It's a great pleasure to be among such a distinguished group of experts, regulators, policymakers, and representatives of international regional organizations, many of whom are important partners and stakeholders of the Union for the Mediterranean. The contributions of such partners have enriched regional dialogue in the framework of the UFM energy platforms and continue to shape Euromed energy cooperation in a region rife with massive potential for integration. In this regard, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the Association of Mediterranean Energy Regulators for their cordial invitation, not to mention continuing to set a good example of maintaining an action-oriented partnership with the Union for the Mediterranean Secretariat towards fulfilling the fundamental prerequisites for energy market integration in the Mediterranean. Energy has always been a priority on the Euro-Mediterranean cooperation agenda since the launching of the Barcelona process in 1995, which aimed to foster a region of cooperation, peace, and prosperity through partnership and collaboration. And energy cooperation has continued featuring predominantly on the agenda of the Union for the Mediterranean since its launching. As many of you already know, the Union for the Mediterranean was established in 2008 to give a new impetus to the Barcelona process, although through a political framework of genuine cooperation and joint ownership, to promote economic integration between the EU and southern and eastern Mediterranean neighboring countries by building consensus and focusing on tangible projects and initiatives. Energy and climate action have constituted major elements of the UFM action since its inception, based on several ambitious agendas and initiatives established by member states to enhance energy security and enable smooth transitions towards more sustainable energy models while dealing with urgent climate challenges in our region. In this regard, the UFM Secretariat has endeavored under the guidance of the UFM co-presidency, currently held by the European Union and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and the support of its member states to establish a structured framework of energy cooperation. As such, the Secretariat has established in 2015 the 3 UFM energy platforms which were launched during a senior officials meeting, namely the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Platform, the Regional Electricity Market Platform, and the Gas Platform. Since their creation, these platforms have been laying the foundations of tangible energy cooperation in our region, thanks to the generous support of the European Commission, not to mention the Swedish International Development Agency, which also supports those platforms, not to mention the cooperation with our partners, including MEDREG, METISO, OME, MEDENER, RECRE, who provided those platforms with invaluable support and technical expertise. While the Euro-Mediterranean region is full of potential for strong energy cooperation, there are several particularities and challenges that we all know that we need to overcome if we are to establish a level of integration that matches our aspirations while remaining aware of the realities, which include asymmetric levels of energy integration and insufficient infrastructure. For example, although EU cooperation with its eastern neighboring countries in the framework of the energy community is most advanced, cooperation with North Africa lagged behind and did not maintain the same pace. And while the importance of integrating solar and thermal energy potential from North Africa has been established for a very long time, it has often encountered several challenges that delayed its materialization. To illustrate, there are currently 82 interconnections between the EU and its southern and eastern neighboring countries, only 2 of which act as the sole link connecting Europe to North Africa between Spain and Morocco, with a combined nominal capacity of 1.4 gigawatts. This interconnection had mostly been utilized until 2018 to help Morocco meet its growing electricity demand. While there have been several political and technical factors in the past that have contributed to the aforementioned state, the recent developments, however, suggest a resurgence of interest in a comprehensive Euro-Mediterranean electricity market integration. Such developments include several policy packages by the EU that encourage market integration and setting ambitious long-term decarbonization and CO2 reduction targets that require an accelerated uptake of renewable energy sources, not to mention national commitments in the framework of the Paris Agreement. This, coupled with the keen interest of member states to act, have triggered some energy policy reorientation in our region. Considerations pertaining to the potential of new interconnections and achieving sustainable energy transition, managing a bigger share of renewable energy sources, and reducing CO2 emission have been given a higher priority by policymakers as opposed to that traditional consideration regarding security of supply. On the southern rim of the Mediterranean, there have also been some major changes as well. In 2018, Morocco has managed to become a net energy exporter for the first time, sending to Spain more than 20,000 gigawatt hours while importing nearly half that amount. This augmented capacity has prompted the signature of a memorandum of understanding between Morocco and Spain in March 2019 to establish a third 700 megawatt line, which would be operational by 2026. There are also advanced talks between Morocco and Portugal regarding a 1 gigawatt interconnection. On another note, over the past few years, there have been other developments witnessed in the gas markets that created irrevocable changes in energy policy across the region. The creation of spot gas markets was a game changer for primary energy markets by providing more competitiveness and flexibility. Natural gas has been increasingly becoming perceived as a bridge between energy security and sustainable energy governance, not to mention a vehicle towards a clean energy future. Not only can natural gas help reduce CO2 emissions, but it can also enable a rapid response to fluctuations in demand through the utilization of sustainable storage and LNG facilities. Furthermore, the discovery of substantial new reserves in the Eastern Mediterranean has not only inspired optimism toward energy security on a national level, but also validated the feasibility of energy interdependence and regional cooperation in managing natural gas reserves. In this regard, the establishment of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum in January 2019 stands as a testament to such will to foster multilateral cooperation in a market that has been traditionally characterized by severe competition and gives promising signs for the potential development of sub-regional gas hub in the region. And aside from the growing interest in LNG infrastructure projects over the past few years, the EastMed pipeline also holds immense potential for strengthening energy cooperation across the banks of the Mediterranean, as it will have the potential to enhance energy security in Europe and reduce CO2 emissions in the medium term, while creating further potential for economic growth and development in the EastMed region. These are but a few glimpses of the evolving nature of the energy markets that we have been experiencing. And you'll be hearing about more of them from our panelists, as well as what Houda has already mentioned regarding the natural gas market. And while the above-mentioned developments inspire a lot of optimism and confidence in what is yet to come, we remain far from achieving the level of energy cooperation that matches our ambitions. This cooperation is not only feasible and convenient for energy security and economic development, but is also critical to achieving necessary emission cuts to mitigate the effects of climate change. It is this energy trilemma that motivates the actions of the UFM Secretariat. And while our efforts have been progressing at a steady pace, there is an urgency for accelerated action, taking into consideration the rapidly escalating impacts of climate change in the Mediterranean, with all its socio-economic and political effects, particularly as the lowered threshold for temperature increase of 1.5 degrees has already been exceeded. Therefore, we will seek to accelerate our endeavors to build consensus, harmonize regulations, support the development of sub-regional markets, and identify relevant energy projects of common interest under the guidance of the UFM co-presidency and member states. These efforts will seek to harmonize ambitious yet scattered efforts to avoid a national equilibrium that could potentially leave everyone else worse off. Finally, it would not be an exaggeration to say that establishing a strong regional energy integration in the Euro-Mediterranean region would not only generate a win-win situation for all parties concerned, but could also unleash a new phase of Euro-Mediterranean integration in a matter that strays true to what the Barcelona process has sought to achieve back in 1995. It is in this spirit that the UFM Secretariat will continue working under the guidance of the UFM co-presidency, member states, and in cooperation with its partners, not only to power economic growth and prosperity, but also to empower people as they face unprecedented common challenges. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for sticking so perfectly to your 12-minute slot. This must be diplomatic discipline.
You don't have to use the warning
exactly.
system.
I don't have to use this. Thanks for your elaborations, and I understand from this there is indeed an appetite for further integration and further enhancing integration. And I heard also took from your intervention that there might be even interest to speed up cooperation with the Union in a way similar to the energy community. And I think it was good that you mentioned that this is not only the interest of the Mediterranean countries, this is also in the interest of the European Union. Having said that political support is needed, market integration also needs regulatory support. And actually, I think what this region, what the Mediterranean region really can benefit from is that you have indeed a lot of European experience among you. This is also something that I can tell you, experienced as an energy community. There is a lot to learn, and it's better to avoid mistakes. And with this, I would like to give the floor to Pedro for his presentation on the European experience in market integration, and then particular also MIPGAS.
Thank you very much, Nina. I'm also very happy to be in this session shared by you. Thank you very much. And I also very happy to see a lot of friendly faces in the meeting. And I have to thank the MEDREG and the Secretariat for inviting me to be here, and congratulations for the excellent organization and also the translation ladies that are over there. Thank you very much. So I will try to keep with the 12 minutes. The presentation has a lot of slides, but I will just show some of them. You can see the full presentation. So I will address these three topics: where we are, the gas target model, the EU gas target model. That is, I think we are finishing its implementation. We haven't yet accomplished it. We are finishing it. Then an experience about market integration, the MIPGAS, and then speak a little bit about the uncertainties about the future. So we will address the future role of gas. And the work, I will share with you the work that we are doing at CR and ICER on regarding to ensure to have a common vision regarding the future role of gas. So starting from the EU gas target model, when CR was created, I think in 2001 or something like that, we start sharing, as in MEDREG we are doing now, sharing GGPs, what we talk about, guidelines of good practices. They were not, we are trying to establish a minimum set of rules, non-binding ones, and trying to, by transparency, to show what are the most appropriated rules in very important issues. And those very important issues were related to market integration. How we can ensure a common, larger regional market. And our vision is to ensure that market at EU level. We are not yet there. And to address it, there are some rules or mechanisms, some issues that are that have major importance. One of them is capacity allocation. How we'll allocate the capacity at the huge highways on electricity and gas. So these issues are similar on all energy carriers, namely on the ones that need huge infrastructure. So we have to address how capacity of the interconnectors is allocated to the market. We have to ensure to have a common set of rules regarding this capacity mechanisms. Then interoperability between TSOs and DSOs, transmission system operators, distribution system operators, those infrastructure operators and the market agents. So we have to define also a common set of rules regarding interoperability issues related to communication, to also quality of the services. Then balancing. Balancing is fundamental for the market agents that are entering into the market. So if the balancing cost is huge, when you are starting your operation, you have huge difficulties to balance, to inject your electricity or gas in order to ensure the demand of your consumers that are increasing. And for small suppliers, the costs of balancing are huger are higher than the cost of balancing for the incumbents. So it isn't really a problem, and you have to address it. And of course, the cost of the capacity, the tariffs. How what are the rules to price the cross-border capacity bought by the market agents? Those common set of rules at the initial stage were shared among us on guidelines of good practices without any binding obligation to apply them. And then we start to see that we have to go further. We have to choose the best ones and then oblige all the countries that are involved with it in the creation of this bigger market to apply them. And to do that, I think the third package on the gas was a key issue. Also, we have to see that to understand that the market and the relations are far away from the reality. So we have the physical layer on electricity or in the gas, and then we have a commercial layer. And these two layers are not the same. And when you virtualize the commercial layer, you are improving the liquidity of the market. But if you do it, if you get far away from the physical layer, you will then lose some efficiency in terms of infrastructure cost allocation. And this was discussed before the third package, and and namely on gas, it had a huge impact. Traditionally, the commercial layer on gas, the capacity contracts were made on a point-to-point basis, on a flange-to-flange basis. They were quite aligned with the investment need to finance the infrastructure. And the markets at those times where the commodity was shared in the border of member states, in the border of EU member states and third countries. So, we had a lot of markets indeed. You have so much markets as the number of borders you had in EU. So the virtual layer where the market, the commercial relations were developed were quite near the physical one. And we discussed it, we had to virtualize more than the commercial one. So we discussed a new model that was we have to decouple the entry-exit systems. We have to break the point-to-point capacity contracts to a different type of contracts, where market agents buy capacity to enter into the system, and then they can buy capacity to exit the system without any coupling between the two. And that enabled it to create virtual trading points inside the entry-exit system, and to define the gas hubs where the balancing costs could be discovered. And this was imposed by the third package in 2009, and we are now accomplishing it. We are now finalizing the tariff network code. So it was a 10-year process. And I think of course, to do that, in order to also ensure that those minimum set of rules are binding, new entities have to be created, namely the agency, the ERSE, and the ENSOC. And you must not forget that the public entity is ERSE, and ENSOC, or ENSOE, is an entity made by private companies. So this is also, but of course they are fundamental in order to ensure a process where the discussion between the guidelines provided by the agency, the code proposals can be at the end approved on a binding way and being an obligation to all the member states. This was the process, and I think the results we are achieving good results. We see here the prices at the each entry-exit system at the EU level, and we see that during the last 3-4 years, a huge coupling between prices is being achieved. Nowadays, comparing with what happens in 2004, we have huge differences between the commodity prices in the gas. And in 2008, we may see that the differences are lower than 3 euros per megawatt hour. And all those hubs, all those commodity prices are quite aligned to two huge hubs that are very well functioning hubs, one in TTF, one is TTF in Holland, and the NBP in UK. And we can see that all of the spot markets are have nowadays a huge correlation, a huge price. We can observe a huge price convergence between all of them. So we see that after 10 years of working and implementing, things are starting to go in the good direction. This doesn't signify that prices will decrease. This implies that the prices that we may observe are efficient ones. They are all them aligned with and following, of course, the overall cost of the commodities in the international market. Then an experience that can I share with you, that is the MIB gas. So this, I said that when you virtualize the framework, the commercial framework, you might ensure conditions to have more efficient markets with more competition. And one of the ways to do that is to measure national markets. And we are trying since 2014 to do that in between Portugal and Spain. We discussed several models that can be observed in the presentation. Well, those models, the simplest one is to consider two virtual trading points, two hubs, but with an implicit allocation of capacity. When suppliers buy or sell the commodity in one market, if the price is more convenient in another, then the capacity goes directly with the commodity. One of the difficulties that we have in the gas sector is that, or in any activity, you are selling the commodity, but you have also to take care about the capacity. And the two contracts may not match. And applying some appropriate algorithms, you can ensure that when the supplier sells the commodity and the consumer or another supplier buys in the other market, the capacity goes directly with the commodity. And we call that, we discussed that, and we call that the capacity implicit allocation model. So you retain, you preserve the two virtual trading points, the two hubs, and you have the two balancing zones. You have pricing at cross-border. We don't have to discuss those issues that are quite complex, but you can, applying an appropriate algorithm, improve the efficiency of the two markets. Of course, you can go to more complicated, but of course more efficient models. This is market integration is a process. We have to start from somewhere, and this is the idea. And I can show you MIB gas is rising. So after 4 years, the commodity traded there represents 12% of the total demand, in this case in Spain. And here we can see the convergence. So we see that the gas target model is providing results. Prices are correlated between each other. Here we can see 4 or 5 spot prices, Italy, TTF, NBP, and MIB gas, and the PEG. And now, last part, about the uncertainties of the future. So we are, this is a slide from the International Energy Agency. In the two axes, we can see the energy demand and the emissions. On a scenario as business as usual, in 2014 will be here. This is one of the scenarios of the International Energy Agency. On the scenario of new policies, will be here, and the sustainable development, the scenario that complies with the Paris Agreement, is there, and it's quite challenging. We have to improve our comfort of our society, of our population, and reduce emissions. Keep the demand, but reduce emissions. This picture is a world picture. The picture for regions will be different. The impact on the EU members, it's much bigger than that. And here we can see a figure for the 28 countries of the EU. And we can see that between 2015 and 2030, we have to, of course, a huge reduction in terms of emissions of CO2, mainly ensured by fuel switching from coal and oil derivatives, fuels, to electricity and natural gas. So we expect, and those figures are produced by models. They are a result. They are not an idea that we have. So this is, you use models, you put some inputs in those models, and you get these results. And inputs are the cost of the renewable technology, cost of fossil fuels, CO2 expectations, and then you obtain the appropriate result. And at the end, for 2015, and this is the issue that we have to discuss about the future role of gas. On 2015, it is expected that a huge reduction will obtain. And to obtain this reduction, you have to have a full switching from natural gas to electricity and green gases. And this is the main challenge that we have. Till 2040, we are talking about another energy sector. We are talking about the reduction, a huge reduction on the Brent derivatives fuels. And the natural gas will have a nice future. We'll have a nice bridge footer. It is indeed a bridge vector. But then, and this is my last slide, then you have a problem. You have to discuss how we will organize the energy carriers. We will have in the future, in 2050, 2 energy carriers, electricity and gas. And in these infrastructures of gas, it might be, we might use different type of molecules there. We have to discuss it. How we'll allocate the capacity of these infrastructures. And due to that, we are studying the ERSE and CR. We are discussing about this future, trying to have a common picture on beyond 2025. And I think we have a good document, and we are finalizing it, and it will be launched on 20th of November in Brussels here, and I invite you all to come and see what are our ideas regarding that. Thank you very much, and sorry.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I said before your presentation that indeed a lot of EU experience, European experience can be shared with the Mediterranean countries, and I think this was a very good example. Thanks for this. I hope you did not scare anybody. You said it take Europe 10 years to make a bit of progress, but indeed this is the truth. I would have some questions, but I think having in mind timing, let's go directly to the next presentation. I said already we need infrastructure for market integration, and here is as I said, one of my favorite projects because it really links Europe energy community and Mediterranean countries. Please, the floor is yours.
First of all, thanks for having me here today. I know it's very difficult to be the last presenter of the day. I will try to overcome this problem by impressing you with my excellent presentation. Please try to push yourselves to listen to it for a while. If you don't like it, you may go back to sleep, okay? So today I will try to talk about a very good example of a successful multilateral cooperation in the field of energy, Southern Gas Corridor and TANAP. Actually, Southern Gas Corridor is the name of a new gas value chain with a set of investments, upstream and midstream investments, extending from the hydrocarbon-rich Caspian region, first to Turkey and then to major consumption center of the world, the European Union. The first bit of the project is the Shah Deniz Stage 2 gas development program with 7 shareholders. I mean, they're trying to exploit the reserves, which is more or less equivalent of 1.4 trillion cubic meters. The second bit of the Southern Gas Corridor is South Caucasus pipeline expansion, which has already been in operation for more than 12 years now, under the first gas sale and purchase agreement between Turkey and Azerbaijan, signed in 2001. There are also 7 shareholders of this. And today I will try to focus on our part, Trans-Anatolian Natural Gas Pipeline Project, which is the longest and the largest diameter section of this new gas supply chain. And then, of course, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, which is the outlet of the Southern Gas Corridor to Europe. Actually, when we look at the Southern Gas Corridor with today's investment for a transportation capacity of 16 billion cubic meters per annum, there are 2 shippers, Azerbaijan Gas Supply Company and BOTAŞ for the moment. The total capacity is 16 billion cubic meters, 6 BCM of which will be used by BOTAŞ, and the remaining 10 BCM will be used by some of the major players in Europe. There are 9 buyers of Azeri gas on Turkey-Greece border. Why TANAP and Southern Gas Corridor? Of course, I mean, it provides many benefits for both supplying country, Azerbaijan, and the consuming markets, Turkey and Europe. The first thing is to increase supply security and diversity, as well as a diversity of supply routes for Europe. We know the problems faced by Southeast European countries in the past because of the problems between the main supplier, Russian Federation, and the transit countries on the corridor. So TANAP will be a cure to some of these problems which were faced in the past. Actually, the total volume is just complementary, I mean only 16 BCM, which is nothing compared with the volumes exportable from Russian Federation to Europe every year. But it is important, especially for countries who are 100% dependent on a single source country. Of course, we will make a lot of revenues as the investors of the Southern Gas Corridor from both gas sales and transportation. If I go into deep of the project scope for TANAP project, actually we are building a telescopic pipeline which starts with the 56-inch section, which is one of the largest diameter pipelines ever built in Europe. You may see a comparison between TANAP, TAP, SCPX, and the BTC pipeline project, which was realized almost 13 years ago. It was 42 inches. Now ours is 56. Also, it is one of the longest pipelines ever built in the region. The remaining 48-inch section starts from Eskişehir and is extended to Turkey-Greece border. It is 48-inch because after BOTAŞ offtakes some 6 BCM, there is no need to keep the pipe diameter as it is. For reducing the cost, we have reduced the pipe diameter. We also have a twin pipeline binding the 2 sides of the Dardanelles Strait. Our initial capacity for phase 1, which is actually the set of investments necessary to deliver gas to Turkey, was 6 BCM. This year we have reached the 16 billion cubic meters capacity as a total. In phase 2, if there are any other exportable gas volumes from Azerbaijan or from other sources of supply, we can reach to 24 BCM and then 31 BCM in phase 3 if there is enough volume of gas. By adding up some some compressor stations to our system, we can reach this capacity. Our pipeline was designed for this transportation capacity. TANAP is crossing 20 provinces, 67 districts, and 600 villages. It's a huge project. These are some of the potential supply sources for the project in the future. Currently, the only supply source is Azerbaijan. And phase 2, most possibly, it will be, again, the other fields of Azerbaijan who will be the source of supply for TANAP. There are also some other opportunities available in the region, especially the ones in Eastern Mediterranean and Northern Iraq are quite promising. Iran is still a sanctioned country, although they are the second biggest gas reserve holder in the world. Because of these sanctions, we cannot use them as a source of supply for the moment. There are several commercial and operational agreements which we have to work under. 2 GTAs have already been signed with AGSC and BOTAŞ for the moment. There are 1 entry point, single entry point project, and 2 exit points in Turkey and 1 exit point for Europe. We have no connection to any underground storage facility in Turkey. We have no backflow structure at interconnection points. We have a distance-based tariff based on 100% ship-or-pay obligations. Our tariff model is based on annual and daily reserve capacity. There are several technical interfaces and interoperability issues because we are talking about 3 different pipeline systems working under 3 different regulatory regimes. Especially Turkey is not a member state of European Union. That's why we have different rules and regulations. Although they are mostly aligned with European Union, we are not liable. We are not obliged to have, for example, third-party access rules and the other stuff. Mostly, there are some provisions, differences, which need to be harmonized, like gas days, management of line packs, so on and so forth. These are some of the important milestones achieved in our project. Everything has started actually back in 2012 with the intergovernmental and host government agreements ratified by the relevant parties. The final investment decision was taken by the end of 2013. The construction activities started by 2015. And only in 3 construction seasons, we have been successful to deliver the first phase of the project. As of last year, June 30th of last year, we have initiated the commercial operations to Turkey. And hopefully, we will start commercial operations to Europe by the 4th quarter of the next year. Actually, we are ready to deliver the gas to Europe for the moment, but we will still have to wait for TAP's turn. We have to wait for their completion. Here is some of the highlights about our project. I already mentioned the inauguration ceremony held for phase 0. Towards the end of this month, we are planning to hold another inauguration ceremony for the European section of our pipeline. It's already in place, which was mechanically completed by the end of last year. Hopefully it will be held on 30th or 29th of November in İpsala, Turkey-Greece border. The overall project progress figures are here. For the first phase, 100% progress, and in overall, it's 99.9%. These are some of the figures which might be of interest to you, some of the statistics which shows how much work has been done to deliver such a big project. We have already worked more than 114 million man-hours. We have driven more than 130 million kilometers. The longest time achieved without lost time accidents were 20 million man-hours. We have handled and welded 131,000 line pipes with 13 meters each, and also 10 tons each. We have had some crossings, more than 6,800, including rivers, lakes, telecom infrastructures, power cables, whatever. These are the number of correspondences and paperwork done in the context of the project. I think this figure is important. We have achieved a very high percentage of amicable agreements in our land acquisitions, 53.84%, with more or less 115,000 landowners. These are some of the records we have broken. Actually, nobody is perfect, but we are nobody, as you see here. In the context of TANAP project, we have broken many records of the pipeline construction industry. This is our safety performance. These were the targets at the beginning. Now, these are the realizations. Unfortunately, we have some fatalities, which is quite normal for this type of project because you are working in 20 different provinces in the context of a 1,850 kilometers pipeline. So you cannot control all the sites, although we have had a HSE team, more than 100 people. You cannot be everywhere at the same time. This is the financial performance of the project. We have completed our project with 45% cost saving. At the beginning, our capex estimate was something around 11.8 billion, which is now 6.5, still with some contingency. Actually, we have changed all the benchmarks in the sector, which is mainly attributable to our specific procurement strategy, which is based on bid updates, best and final offers, very best and final offers, very, very best and final offers, and also to some of the project management activities, practices that we have applied throughout the project. Currently, retrospectively, our project shareholders have secured some $3.75 billion from international financial institutions. We also received some grants from under the framework of European Union's Projects of Common Interest program, which is more or less 15 million euros for the moment. These are some of the facilities, above ground installations we have already completed in the context of phase 1 and phase 1. All right, I'm speeding up. Some pictures from the sites. Restatement has already started and finished in many parts of the pipeline. Operationally, I mean, we are ready, not only for Turkey, but also for Europe. I would like to also talk about social and environmental investment program. We are supporting 1,000 projects, more or less, with a budget of $84 million in 20 different provinces under different funding mechanisms. These are some of the projects per subject. These are the beneficiaries of the program. We give utmost importance to the vulnerable groups in realizing those projects. These are the awards which were given by international organizations to our project in the context of our social and environmental investment program. And last but not least, we have hit many archaeological sites while realizing our project. More than 1,000 artifacts were registered into the inventories of the relevant museums. And these are some of the replicas of these artifacts which were being exhibited in our halls in TANAP headquarters. Thank you so much for your patience.
Very much. Indeed, very impressive slides. So I guess I can confirm, at least from my side, you impressed us with your slides. You impressed me also with the fact that you managed 32 slides almost in time. So this is also a record. Really, thanks a lot for the presentation. It was very, very interesting. I'm also very sorry that I had to be a bit strict on timing because the presentations, all of them were really very interesting and I think they deserve a lot of attention. But as I said, we have to somehow catch up also on timing. Finally, I would still like to give the audience the opportunity to maybe raise questions. Very short, very quick. Everybody is already heading for the cocktail reception. Okay, I basically I would have some questions, I have to admit. I will not ask them now because Hassan is already very much eager to go for the next agenda item. Do we have time? Okay. I will maybe have, no, I will not do this. I will ask the gentleman over the cocktail receptions the questions that I had. Otherwise, I think if you have questions still later on, the contacts are available on the slides, so everybody will be available to answer your questions by phone, by email, by whichever means. From my side, would only like to say one thing at the end, answering my question that I raised at the beginning. Do we need more integration? Do we need more common rules? I take from the presentation, or at least a common set of minimum rules, I take from today's presentation a yes, for various reasons, for infrastructure reasons, for regulatory reasons, for investment facilitation reasons, and I'm very pleased to hear that there is also apparently political appetite and potential support for this. With this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thanks again for the panelists for your presentations and your contributions, and I hand over to Hassan. Thank you.